let's get the read from Don Peebles, former big fundraiser for Barack Obama. And, you know, Don has been very critical of the leftward lurch in the party. Now, Don, it's way too early to say at this point, but if the party makes a leftward lurch here, your concern would be?
That the Democratic Party loses again to Donald Trump. I mean, people are saying never Bernie Sanders, and I remember being on Fox when Donald Trump first got in and said he was poised to win the nomination and then ultimately the presidency. I think Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are very viable candidates that have the capacity to win, because I don't think it's going to take more than 25 to 30% of the delegates going, of the races going across the board of these different states.
So we got to think of things. There are 41 delegates in this state when all is said and done. I know this is to go to the state convention where you're going to have over 2,000 of these delegates, so they whittle that down to the 41. But Lee Carter, I'm looking at the math of the process. You might have a situation where whoever scores the popular vote, precinct by precinct, or, you know, caucus by caucus site, a very different read of who's a winner.
Yes, you could. And that is where people are going. The thing that I really get worried about something like that happening, because
now, they say it's very unlikely to happen with this setup.
It's very unlikely to happen, but it could be possible. If that happens, we're really going to have more doubts about the system. When the trust in the system starts breaking, that's when we're in real trouble. And so I really hope that's not what happens. I think they've tried to protect against it, but there is obviously a chance that it could.
You know, I'm not sure how voters should read the Iowa result, because this is a caucus. You physically have to travel to a precinct to participate. There was only 16% who participated in Iowa in the caucus in 2016.
They're expecting more with this software,
well, you have to physically be there.
Right.
But versus 50...
At another place.
Right, but versus 52% who showed up for the New Hampshire one. So the people who are physically going to show up are the ones who are fired up. Who is fired up? The Bernie Sanders base. Why are they fired up? He's saying free everything. Overturn the system. Wait for the sticker shock on his policies for free.
Well, let's be careful.
Wait,
Lizzie, I don't want to veer into the politics of it. What I'm just trying to say here is, regardless of whose passion is aligned with whom, the only thing I'm wondering about is whether that carries. In other words, do you have, and I think you touched on it, on this notion that view represented by, let's say, a Bernie Sanders or a Liz Warren, do they, in this caucus process, cancel each other out, or in other words, divide that vote, leaving someone like Mayor Pete Buttigieg or even a Joe Biden up the middle? What do you think of that?
Well, look, in fact, Neil, I think that what happens here is Elizabeth Warren is exceptionally well organized. Iowa's also about organization. Barack Obama won Iowa because he was a great candidate, but he was also the best organized. And so I think that you're going to have, it takes committed voters to come out tonight, and it also takes a good organization to get them there. So I would look at Warren, and I don't think they cancel each other out. I think Biden's going to struggle tonight. And I think Buttigieg, this is his moment in the sun. He'll probably have a couple more of those, and then he's going to fade into the sunset.
My only point about New Hampshire is who turns up.
Right.
To participate. That's all.
I'd be interested to know what Don Peebles thinks, and I think he just answered it. But there seems to be some mounting evidence tonight from the very early numbers that we're seeing, by the way, including where Conall McShane is in that precinct, that Pete Buttigieg is doing pretty well, actually. I've seen some numbers saying that
maybe
some
to that
he may even be leading. But and whether or not, Don Peebles just makes the point that this is his moment in the sun. He's kind of, he's a Midwesterner. He's there. He's made a good pitch. I wonder, but it is interesting. We've all been focusing on this battle between, the traditionalists or the moderates versus the progressives, between Warren and Sanders on the one hand and Biden and maybe Bloomberg on the other. Is there some kind of possibility and I'd be interested in what Don thinks, for someone like a Buttigieg to come through, perhaps in a way in a kind of a unifying figure to be able to bring the party around him? Or is it?
What do you think of that, Don? That's not a bad thought. What do you think?
Well, Buttigieg is a progressive candidate who's got some moderate views, who served in the military. So he's appealing in that regard. He's kind of a compromise candidate for change. Elections are all about looking forward and about change. But I think that Warren's message is extremely powerful if you're listening to it or you're looking for it. But I think tonight is going to be Sanders, Warren, and Buttigieg and then Biden. And those top three will finish. I mean, I don't know what order they end up finishing in. I wouldn't be surprised if it was any one of those three. I'd be very surprised if Biden were pulling it out. But I think he's got to struggle to get into the top four. And maybe he hangs around and gets into, into third place. But I mean, it's going to be a tough night for the vice president tonight. I mean, he is looking at South Carolina to take him to the promised land. Without South Carolina as his, his barrier, I mean, I think he'd be in even more trouble right now.
That can't be.
Go ahead, Ken.
Sorry, that just can't be enough. That can't be enough of a strategy, especially with the compressed Super Tuesday schedule. And if that's what Joe Biden is pinning his hopes on, and if he loses Iowa and New Hampshire, does kind of well and survives out of South Carolina, I don't think that's enough going into Nevada.